Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? So, hot on the heels of last week's Starfield release date announcement, the game has now been certified for release in Australia, and there are a couple of cool little snippets of information we can pull out of this and details that we didn't really have before. So, let's jump in and take a gander, shall we? So yeah, we've got a release date now for Starfield as of the other week. That's 6th of September, so very, very cool. And we'll be getting a decent look at that in June, so very excited for that. But today we have details that are coming out on the classification of the game in Australia, specifically. And yeah, there's a couple of interesting little tidbits here and hints that we hadn't seen before. So if you want to catch up on the release date stuff, I'll link video up in the corner somewhere here, I think, if you want to check that one out. And I will also link up there my sort of deep dive into all the little bits and snippets of information in that release video and trailer and stuff. So there's some cool stuff in there, so do check that one out. So it should be cool. But this classification thing. So let's have a look at the Australian classification people's website. Famously, these guys are crazy hardcore in their censorship of video games. Bethesda in particular, and other developers as well, have fallen foul of their very, very draconian "you can't show that" rules, which is often backcrap crazy, I think would be a good way of putting it. They take it way too far. So fortunately, in the last year or two, it seems to be dialing back a tiny little bit, but still, it has been an issue for years, so there's that whole thing. But as we can see, we've got a little bit of indicator here on what's going on. So we've got different themes listed down here, and we've got how impactful they are to the game, which overall will then impact the rating the game gets. So when we go back to, say, Fallout 3, when that was initially set up for classification, the Australian board turned around and went, no, you're not releasing that. And flat told Bethesda, take out your drug-related themes, or we won't let you put the game out, which Bethesda then had to do. Basically, I believe they removed a bunch of animations related to the use of chems in Fallout 3, and resubmitted for classification, and it got through at a 15, apparently. Starfield has currently gone through with a restricted 18+ on the drug use, so this is the big one, really. We'll have a look at the other stuff in flyby in a minute, but yeah, the drug use thing is at restricted 18+. So let's have a quick gander at what that actually means. Restricted 18, this is where we are for Starfield at the moment. We get into adult films below that, so that's a different kettle of fish entirely. Mostly. But we have restricted 18+, so this is where the drug content is in Starfield at the moment. It says material is restricted to adults as it contains content that is considered high in impact for viewers. That's about as vague as you can possibly get in terms of a definition, really. Includes content that may be offensive to sections of the adult community. I think you're stretching the definition there. This is me coming back to the "are you nuts" perspective on the classification people, and just to be honest, the answer is yes, they are. Person may be asked for proof of their age before purchasing, hiring or viewing 18+, computer games or films. Right. Basically what it means is very high impact depiction of drug use. So let's bounce back again. There we are. From previous games, particularly, say, Fallout 3, stuff like that, we can infer that means you're going to see characters probably self-administering varying drugs. And in all likelihood, it's not, should we say, traditional medicinal use. If you had a doctor, giving you a shot in the arm for something, chances are that's going to be viewed quite differently to somebody taking illicit drugs. And we know there are pirates, we know there are sort of fringe groups and stuff in Starfield and on the edge of society, and it's not a great leap to imagine, given Bethesda's previous iterations of drug use in their games, that these groups might be smuggling, might be using it. We also know there is a drug on the planet of Neon, or the planet that the city of Neon is on. Not quite sure if they have the same name or different, but it's this platform on stilts over an ocean. I'll try and throw up a picture of it so you can see it. But the gist of it is they went down there to, I'm not so sure if it was mining or catching fish, but one or the other. And while they were there, they discovered a fish that had highly hallucinogenic properties, and discovered that it was much more lucrative to sell this drug derived from these fish. So it may well relate to that. We also know that Neon is the only place this drug is actually legal. Everywhere else is very anti it, so there's a very strong chance that this content in this area is what's part of it. But it also stands to reason. We know in the Fallout series, for example, you get raiders who are rather into their chem use. We've got pirates in Starfield. Wouldn't be a great stretch to imagine that they've taken a few leaves out of the Raider book and applied them to the pirates, in that they're probably quite into their drug use as well. But, as I say, rumour has it they're getting slightly less draconian in their interpretation of their rules in recent years, so it seems likely that maybe Starfield has just snuck under the bar there because it depicts fictional drugs as opposed to real-world ones. That sort of thing does come up in various places as being an issue. I believe Fallout releases in places like Japan and stuff had other reasons, not just related to drugs, but also that too, wherein the game was said, yeah, you can't put this out because it features a real-world drug, or, atomic weapons and stuff like that. So names were changed and things like that for it, but because all of this is fictionalised, or everything we know about so far, it's probably just kind of snuck under the bar there, and I think that's probably why it's got through. So, additional confirmation of heavy chem use, which, as I say, has not been mentioned in quite a long time. It got mentioned early on when they first talked about neon, so we're probably looking 18 months ago now, more? It was a while back anyway, and there's that side of things. As to whether or not it'll come into other parts of the gameplay, I'm guessing it probably will, but you can't really infer from this, so that's quite cool. So, jumping on a little bit, themes. Not quite sure what the ins and outs of this are. I'm guessing it's story beats. These categories are not particularly well explained on here, or if they are, I can't find out where. And it's a government website. It's not the most handy ever. So themes probably is how intense are the story beats, stuff like that. Does it deal with unpleasant issues? You pick all manner of things that are quite on the knuckle and hard for people to deal with, and perhaps triggering, things like that. Apparently there's some of that cropping up in Starfield, but not too much, I guess. But again, very, very vague, so hard to nail down. Violence, we have strong impact. Now, a lot of Bethesda games have a certain amount of gore in. Certainly with Fallout it does. There's a bit in Skyrim, but it's not over the top. I don't think it's quite as strong as it is in Fallout. I'm guessing Starfield will be somewhere along those lines. There might be blood spatter, stuff like that from people getting shot, and there's a lot of people getting shot. It's an RPG with gunplay as a major combat mechanic, and combat is a major mechanic, so violence being relatively high up the list is not terribly surprising. Strong language, there's a bit of it, but it's not over the top. Yeah, that's Bethesda all over. They do include strong language in places where it's contextually relevant, but they tend not to just throw it in gratuitously for the sake of it. It's relevant to the scenario it's in, so it's probably quite strong language when it crops up, but it's probably not every 5 minutes at the same time. I think we can infer from the moderate impact thing. Drug use we've gone. Nudity. This is kind of surprising. I was honestly thinking that would probably come out at none, but I'm guessing you can take all your characters' clothes off and they'll stand there in, well, the usual way for a Bethesda game is their underwear. So that might be a thing. There might be characters walking around with no shirt on and stuff like that. It's very mild impact, so it's not going to be a lot. Basically, I would guess, and it is a pure guess, but if it's coming that mild on a classification board that tend to be that hardcore about stuff, it's probably a case of people can get stripped down to their underwear, and it's probably the player character. Especially given that the following point is sex, and there is listed none. We do know you can have relationships and stuff with companions and stuff, but clearly no depictions of sex. So that's standard for Bethesda games. Other games take it a different route, but Bethesda tend not to. So there we go. But ultimately, yeah, it's not too surprising that violence and drug use are the big two. Drug use, people tend to be a little uncomfortable with particularly distinct depictions of that. I'm guessing, as I say again, it's going to be fictionalized and recognisably fictionalized. So that's probably why it's got through okay. If it was too realistic, they'd go no, I'm sure. And as we say, we know the one drug we do know about is this one from Neon that is entirely fictional anyway, and a hallucinogen, so that should be quite interesting to explore further in more detail. But that's quite cool. We've got some interesting little insights into what's going on in the game. There is another factor that is perhaps worth mentioning in passing on the way out, and that is that I mentioned in my previous videos, my big theory is that it's a release date thing with other games and how busy the area around June is. That is behind Starfield being pushed back to September, primarily. I don't think it's anything to do with the game massively needing to change or needing massive amounts of work. rumours, somewhat rumours, that people are having a lot of fun playtesting it is always good to hear, but again, it's rumours and it's non-specific. And also, if the game has been successfully classified, that we can definitely infer from that no substantial changes will be made going forward to the content of the game. So no more cut content, nothing sneaking in and being added, certainly. We'll basically take from this that the game is in its final configuration and they're just doing the final polish, which is what we'd expect for the last 6 or so months of development. Probably 5 months, because let's be honest, it'll go gold in August for a 6th of September release. So yeah, kind of a little extra credence to the idea that the game is basically done and they're just doing the last bits of cleanup on it. So I'm sure Bethesda will take full advantage of the extra time they've got, but I still doubt it was a major factor in the decision. I think the fact that it was right behind Redfall and a whole bunch of other stuff coming out, that's probably more to do with it. But there we go. So interesting to have a little look at this classification thing, and nice to know that they won't have to pull any content for those in Australia, as they have had to change in the past. Fortunately, they've managed to do it without horrific impact, but looks like they won't have to do that at all here, which is great to see. So, hope you folks found this interesting and informative. If you did, please do consider dropping subs and likes. I will, of course, be covering tons and tons of Starfield stuff between now and September, and, of course, post-September when the game drops as well. So, do join us for that. Down below the video, as always, social media links, merch store, channel memberships, all that good stuff. If you're interested in supporting the channel that way, hugely helps out. So, please do check that out. Very, very, very much appreciated. And do join us for live streams as well. We're, of course, playing Fallout 76, our major thing at the moment. And we are finishing up Red Dead 2 at the moment before we move on to some other cool stuff that we've got lined up for the rest of the year up to Starfield. So, if you want to join us for any of that stuff and Starfield when the time comes, love to see you there. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.